Before we begin tonight's story, I want to know something from you. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing how our pack stretches across the globe, every city, every country, all bound together by these stories of love, fate, and wolves under the moon. Now, settle in. Let the world fade away. Tonight, I'm going to take you into a tale of heartbreak, destiny, and a love that refuses to be denied. It begins with a woman who had lost everything in a single night. Rain pelted the streets outside the Crimson Moon nightclub, streaming down the glass windows in endless rivers, blurring the city lights into a watercolor of gold and crimson. Inside, the bass thrummed low, pulsing through bodies pressed too close on the dance floor. Laughter, clinking glasses, the occasional shout, the sounds of people living without consequence. But at the bar, Aria sat alone. Her emerald green eyes, once so bright and alive, were dulled now, glassy with unshed tears. She nursed her third whiskey, the ice clinking softly as she swirled the amber liquid, staring into it as though it could offer her answers. Just hours ago, her entire world had crumbled. The white dress still hung in her closet, tags untouched, veil carefully folded on her bed. Tomorrow should have been her wedding day, the day she vowed her life to the man she had believed would protect her heart forever. But instead, she had walked into her apartment and found him, her fiancé of 3 years, tangled in sheets with her sister. Her sister. The girl she had grown up with, defended, sacrificed for. The betrayal burned like acid in her veins. It wasn't just the cheating, though that was cruel enough. It was the years of lies, the shattered dreams, the way her entire future had been ripped away in a single breath. So now, she sat in a darkened corner of a nightclub she had never been to before, dressed in a black slip dress that clung to her curves, her auburn hair loose around her face, daring herself to do what she had never done, drown her pain, forget her past, and maybe, just for one night, feel something other than misery. She was broken. And she wanted oblivion. But across the smoky room, someone was watching her. Damon Blackthorne. To the human world, he was the ruthless billionaire, the man behind Blackthorne Industries, a man who built empires with his bare hands and crushed competitors with a single phone call. But beneath the polished suits and skyscrapers, he was something far older, far more dangerous. Alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack. Ruler of wolves for over a century and a half. A man whose name was spoken with respect and fear alike. And for the first time in years, his wolf stirred. He had walked into the club by chance, intending nothing more than a drink, a quiet moment before returning to the endless demands of pack politics. But then he scented her. Fate. The air shifted the moment she entered his territory. Her scent wrapped around him like wildfire and rain, intoxicating, undeniable. His wolf, silent for so long, howled inside him with recognition. Mate. Golden eyes tracked her every movement as she sat at the bar, her shoulders squared in defiance even as her heart broke beneath her skin. He could feel it, taste it, her pain, her fury, her need. And something inside him, something primal and possessive, snapped awake. She didn't know it yet, but she belonged to him. Aria felt the weight of eyes on her, but she ignored it. Men had stared before, and she had always brushed it off with cool indifference. But tonight, it felt different. Heavy. Electric. When she finally looked up, her gaze collided with his. For a heartbeat, the noise of the club faded. The dancers, the music, the clinking glasses, all of it blurred into silence. All she could see were those golden eyes across the room, burning into her like molten fire. Her pulse skipped. Her breath caught. Something inside her stirred, something she couldn't explain. But she tore her gaze away. She didn't come here to flirt. She didn't come here to be seen. She came here to forget. And yet, she could still feel him watching. Damon rose from his table, his tall frame cutting easily through the crowd. Every step was controlled, predatory. Wolves moved like that, silent, powerful, impossible to ignore. By the time he reached the bar, the bartender had already retreated under his command. He slid into the seat beside her as though he had every right to be there. "A woman like you shouldn't be drinking alone in a place like this," he said, his voice deep, rich, threaded with authority. Aria's lips curved into a bitter smile. "And what kind of place is this?" His gaze lingered on her, unflinching. "A place where predators hunt the wounded." Something in his tone made her shiver. She hated herself for it, but she couldn't look away. He reached out, steadying her hand as she lifted her glass. The contact sent a jolt through her, heat, wild and unfamiliar. His scent hit her then, cedar and storm, dark and intoxicating. Aria pulled her hand back, narrowing her eyes. "I don't need saving." His lips curved faintly, but there was no amusement in his gaze. "I didn't say you did." The challenge hung between them, sparking like flint. Neither of them moved away. And somewhere deep inside, both knew, this was no ordinary meeting. This was the beginning of something that would change everything. Aria had always been the kind of woman who carried her scars in silence. To the world, she seemed polished, successful, composed, the kind of woman who owned her own business and walked with her head held high. But inside, she carried the echoes of old wounds, sharp and unhealed. Her story hadn't started in glittering penthouses or well-lit design studios. No, it began in a small, crumbling house on the outskirts of town, under the cold guardianship of her aunt. Aria had been just 12 when tragedy struck. Her parents lost in a car accident that left her and her sister Maya orphaned overnight. Her aunt had taken them in, but love was not part of the bargain. Maya, beautiful and bright, had been showered with what scraps of affection the woman could muster. Aria, quiet and thoughtful, had been treated like an obligation. She learned quickly that in that house, she had to earn every smile, every kind word. And more often than not, she failed. That's when the cracks began to form. By her teenage years, Aria had already mastered the art of disappearing. While Maya laughed with friends and basked in the attention, Aria buried herself in books. She sketched designs in the margins of her schoolwork, dreaming of colors and textures, building castles in her imagination even as her reality was nothing but gray walls and harsher words. When she turned 18, she left. Alone, determined, she took whatever small savings she had and built herself a life from the ground up. By sheer will and unrelenting drive, she carved out a place in the world. Her interior design business grew, one client at a time, until she had built something her aunt could never belittle and her sister could never overshadow. On paper, she was a success story. In her heart, she still felt the same old ache, that gnawing question of whether she was ever truly worthy of being loved. And then Jake had come along. Charming, steady, safe. He had promised her forever. For 3 years she believed him, let herself imagine a future filled with warmth and family, the kind she'd been denied as a child. Until the night she found him with Maya, and every buried insecurity came roaring back to life. Now, as she sat in that nightclub, drinking to forget, her wounds weren't just fresh. They were wide open, bleeding beneath her skin. Damon's story was written on a different kind of battlefield. To humans, Damon Blackthorne was the kind of man whispered about in boardrooms and financial magazines. A billionaire, a genius, a ruthless strategist who had taken Blackthorne Industries from a struggling startup to a global empire. His name carried weight. His reputation, unshakable. But his true power didn't come from contracts or skyscrapers. It came from blood, from the centuries-old bond of pack and alpha. Damon had been born into the Shadow Moon pack nearly 200 years ago, his lineage pure, his destiny sealed before he drew his first breath. By the age of 25, he had fought and won his right to lead. For a century and a half, he had ruled with an iron hand, protecting his wolves from enemies that lurked both in shadows and in plain sight. His people called him just. Outsiders called him ruthless. Both were true. And yet, for all his victories, for all his dominance, one thing had always eluded him. His mate. In the world of wolves, fate was absolute. Somewhere, out there, each wolf had another, one soul destined to meet and bind, two halves of a whole meant to stand together. For most, the bond came early, effortless. But for Damon, decades stretched into centuries, and still, his wolf remained restless, unclaimed. The council had grown impatient. They pressed him to take a Luna, to choose from among the powerful she-wolves eager for his throne. For years, he ignored them, refusing to bind himself to anyone less than the one the moon goddess intended. But even alphas are not immune to loneliness. And even the strongest hearts can begin to wonder if destiny has forgotten them. So Damon had buried himself in duty. He built his empire brick by brick, meeting with kings and CEOs alike, making his name impossible to erase. He ruled his pack with discipline, with fairness, with unquestionable strength. His wolf grew quieter with each passing year, until sometimes Damon wondered if it had given up altogether. But then Aria walked into the crimson moon. The moment her scent reached him, rain and wildflowers, delicate and fierce all at once, something inside him snapped awake. His wolf, silent for decades, surged forward with a howl so raw it made his chest ache. Mate. It was impossible. She was human. She was broken. She had no idea what she was walking into. And yet, she was his. That was the difference between them. Aria believed she was unworthy of love, cursed to be second best forever. Damon had convinced himself love was something the moon goddess had denied him. And in one smoky nightclub, fate set their paths on a collision course. Because Aria, fragile and furious, wasn't just a woman nursing heartbreak. She was the missing half of Damon's soul. And Damon, ruthless alpha and billionaire, wasn't just another dangerous man. He was the wolf who would fight the world itself to claim her. The night was still young. Their story had only just begun. The bass throbbed low through the walls of the Crimson Moon nightclub, vibrating against Aria's ribs as if it were trying to shake her heart back into rhythm. She sat at the far end of the bar, nursing what was left of her whiskey, watching the golden liquid swirl like molten sunlight. Her emerald eyes were heavy with exhaustion, dulled by heartbreak, but still fierce enough to keep strangers from trying their luck. She wasn't here for conversation. She wasn't here for company. She was here to forget. But someone was already watching. From the shadowed booth near the back of the club, Damon Blackthorne leaned forward, his gaze unflinching. His presence was magnetic, a force that turned the air electric without him uttering a single word. Tall, broad-shouldered, carved like stone, he sat like a predator at rest. Yet it wasn't his imposing size that made people step aside. It was his eyes. Golden, sharp, burning with a hunger that had nothing to do with the drink in front of him. The moment she had walked in, rain dripping from her auburn hair, carrying that scent of wildflowers after a storm, Damon's wolf had awakened. For the first time in decades, his chest had tightened, his blood roaring with recognition. Mate. The word echoed in his head like a vow, both command and promise. He hadn't expected it. He hadn't wanted it tonight. But the moon goddess had given him no choice. Aria felt the heat of his stare long before she looked up. She shifted uncomfortably, running her fingers over the rim of her glass. The air felt thicker somehow, like the oxygen itself had grown heavy. Finally, unable to ignore the weight of his gaze, she lifted her head, and their eyes met. The world went still. Her breath caught, lodged somewhere between disbelief and defiance. His golden eyes seemed to peer straight through her armor, stripping her of every carefully built wall she had wrapped around herself. Her first instinct was to look away, to protect the fragile pieces of herself that had only just shattered hours ago. But something about him wouldn't let her. Damon rose from his seat. His movements were slow, deliberate, commanding without effort. People moved instinctively as he passed, creating a path he didn't ask for but always received. The crowd parted like water around him, and in seconds, he was at her side. He didn't ask if the seat was taken. He simply claimed it. The bartender hurried over, but Damon silenced him with a single look, a command that needed no words. Then, his attention returned to Aria. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, gravelly, carrying a weight that seemed to settle in her bones. A woman like you shouldn't be drinking alone in a place like this. Aria stiffened, turning just enough to meet his stare without shrinking back. And what kind of place is this, exactly? Her tone was sharp, defensive, the voice of someone who had already endured more than enough judgment for one lifetime. His lips curved in the faintest ghost of a smile. A place where wolves circle. Some circle for blood. Others, for beauty. The word lingered between them, and Aria's pulse stumbled. She wasn't sure if it was the whiskey making her dizzy or the way his golden eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. She tore her gaze away, clutching her glass like a shield. He reached out, steadying her trembling hand with a touch that felt far too intimate for strangers. The moment his skin brushed hers, a spark shot up her arm, searing hot and undeniable. She gasped softly, jerking her hand back, but the electricity didn't fade. Damon's wolf howled inside him, demanding more. The bond was already tugging at the edges of his restraint, urging him to claim her here, now, under the flickering neon lights and curious eyes. But Damon had mastered control for centuries, and he would not let his wolf frighten her. Instead, he offered his hand. "Dance with me." Aria blinked at him, startled. "I don't dance with strangers." "Then don't think of me as a stranger." His tone was unshakable, final, as if refusal wasn't truly an option. And somehow, despite the alarms in her head, despite every reason she had to resist, Aria found herself slipping her hand into his. The dance floor cleared around them without a word. Damon's presence demanded space, and others obeyed. He pulled her close, one hand resting firm against the small of her back, the other holding her hand in a grip that was both protective and possessive. The music shifted, slower, darker, the kind that seemed to echo with the rhythm of a heartbeat. As they moved, Aria felt the world blur around her. His body was warm, solid, his scent intoxicating, cedar, storm, and something primal that stirred her in ways she didn't understand. Every step, every turn, felt like a claim. She should have pulled away, should have reminded herself this was reckless, dangerous. But for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt alive. Damon leaned down, his breath grazing her ear. "You're not like the others." Aria's laugh was bitter, sharp. "That's one way to say I don't belong anywhere." His grip tightened, just slightly. "No. It's the only way to say you belong with me." Her chest tightened, her thoughts scattering. He couldn't mean that. He didn't even know her. But the way his eyes burned into hers told her this was no simple flirtation. The song ended, but neither of them moved away. Her lips parted, and before she could stop herself, the words slipped out, quiet but certain. "I want to forget everything." Damon's wolf surged forward, demanding he take her, claim her, bind her now. Damon closed his eyes, fighting the urge, reminding himself she didn't yet understand what she was asking. But when he opened them again, his decision was made. "One night," he murmured, his voice rough with restraint. "One night, little wolf. I'll make you forget your own name." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She didn't know what he meant by little wolf, but the way he said it made her legs weak. Without another word, he guided her from the dance floor, his hand firm at her back, leading her toward the hotel suite above the club. Aria should have been afraid. She should have said no. But for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she wanted to feel something other than pain. And Damon, ruthless, patient Damon, intended to give her everything. The elevator ride felt endless. Aria stood beside Damon, the silence between them thick, charged, alive. She could feel the heat radiating from him, every inch of her body aware of his nearness. His broad shoulders nearly filled the mirrored space, his scent, cedar and storm, drowning out the sterile perfume of steel and glass. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and she hated that he had this effect on her already. She wasn't the kind of woman to be swept away by strangers. Not after everything. But tonight wasn't about who she was. Tonight was about forgetting. The elevator chimed softly, doors sliding open to reveal a private corridor. Damon's hand pressed lightly against the small of her back, guiding her forward. Not possessive. Not forceful. Just steady, as if his touch alone could anchor her trembling world. The penthouse suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the entire room, revealing the glittering city skyline bathed in rain. A fireplace burned low, throwing shadows across sleek leather furniture and polished wood floors. Luxury dripped from every detail, but Aria barely noticed any of it. All she could see was him. Damon closed the door behind them and turned the lock with a deliberate click. For a moment, he simply watched her, golden eyes catching the firelight, unreadable. He was a storm contained in human form, power, danger, restraint balanced on the edge of breaking. Aria crossed her arms, trying to summon courage she wasn't sure she had. So this is where you bring all your one-night distractions? His expression shifted, something sharp flickering in his gaze. No, he said simply. His voice was low, steady, final. Only you. The words cut through her defenses like glass. She wanted to scoff, to accuse him of saying whatever would get her into his bed. But the way he looked at her, steady, unblinking, reverent, made her shiver. She swallowed hard. I don't need promises. I don't need lies. Her voice faltered, breaking on the truth. I just want to feel beautiful again. Damon moved toward her, slow, deliberate, as though she were something fragile. His hand lifted, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face, his fingers lingering at her jaw. You are, he whispered. You always were. Her breath hitched as his lips found hers, soft at first, a question, an invitation. Then deeper, hungrier, as though once he'd tasted her, he could never stop. Her knees weakened, her hands clutching at the fabric of his shirt to steady herself. The world melted away. The rain, the city, the pain that had driven her here, none of it mattered anymore. He lifted her easily, carrying her toward the bed with a strength that didn't strain or falter. She should have questioned how effortlessly he moved, how his presence seemed larger than life. But she didn't care. Tonight wasn't about answers. Tonight was about surrender. Piece by piece, he undressed her, not with haste, but with reverence. Every button undone, every zipper lowered, was treated as if it mattered. He kissed the faint scars on her skin, the ones she usually hid, and each kiss was a vow unspoken. You are not broken. You are not unwanted. You are mine. Her heart ached at the tenderness in his touch, the way he worshipped what others had dismissed. No one had ever touched her like this. No one had ever seen her like this. When his mouth found hers again, it wasn't gentle anymore. It was claiming, consuming. She gave herself over to it, to him, letting the fire sweep through her veins until she no longer remembered the taste of sorrow. And yet, beneath the heat, something else stirred. Something primal, ancient, pulling at her very soul. Damon's control was slipping. His wolf paced furiously beneath his skin, demanding release, demanding to mark her, to bind her. He had sworn he would wait, that he would give her time, but the bond was too strong. Her scent filled his lungs, his blood roared, and his wolf clawed forward with a single word that burned in his mind. Mate. At the height of passion, Damon's restraint snapped. His teeth grazed her neck, and before he could stop himself, he sank them gently, firmly, into the delicate skin between her shoulder and throat. Aria gasped, not in pain, but in shock, as white-hot fire flooded her veins. A rush of power, heat, and something unexplainable surged through her body. The room tilted, her senses sharpened, her heartbeat seemed to echo in his chest as much as her own. The bond had snapped into place. Damon froze, horror and ecstasy warring in his golden eyes as he pulled back, lips stained with her taste. Aria, his voice was hoarse, guttural, as though dragged from the depths of his soul. I didn't mean to. But the damage, or perhaps the miracle, was already done. Aria pressed trembling fingers to the fresh mark on her neck, feeling it pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She stared at him, breathless, confusion and fury colliding in her chest. What did you do to me? She whispered. Damon's jaw clenched. His wolf purred in triumph, but his human side recoiled in guilt. He had bound her. He had made her his mate without explaining what it meant. I marked you, he admitted, voice low, thick with regret and need. You are mine. My mate. Aria stumbled back, clutching the sheets to her chest as if they could protect her from the truth. Mate? What are you talking about? This was supposed to be one night. Just one night. His hand reached for her, then dropped, shaking with restraint. I tried to stop. I tried to give you choice. But the wolf. His words broke off, his chest heaving. The bond is real, Aria. You'll feel it soon. The strength, the connection. You're part of me now. Her emerald eyes burned with betrayal. You took that choice away from me. She grabbed her dress from the floor, pulling it on with shaking hands. Her body felt foreign, electric, as though every cell had been rewired. She didn't know if she wanted to scream or collapse into his arms. Damon stood still, his golden eyes tortured as he watched her. His wolf howled inside him, begging him to hold her, to soothe her. But he let her walk to the door, because for all his power, he couldn't force her heart. When the door slammed behind her, Damon closed his eyes, the sound echoing like a gunshot in his chest. He had waited centuries for his mate. And in one night, he had claimed her, and lost her. Aria woke the next morning in her own bed, sunlight spilling across the sheets like gold. For a moment, she convinced herself it had all been a dream, the whiskey, the stranger with the golden eyes, the way he touched her like she was something precious. But then her hand brushed against her neck. The mark was real. It pulsed faintly beneath her skin, a steady thrum that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her breath caught, panic clawing up her throat. She stumbled into the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The faint crescent-shaped scar glowed faintly silver under the morning light. Her fingers trembled as she traced it. What did you do to me? She whispered to the empty room. But even as fear rippled through her, something else stirred. Her senses felt sharper, clearer. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the faint rustle of leaves outside her apartment window. She smelled rain from the night before, lingering in the city streets. And beneath it all, she felt something tugging at her, not physical, but undeniable. A pull. A bond. Him. Damon. Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to think about him, but she couldn't stop. The echo of his touch burned on her skin, his voice haunted her ears. She should have hated him. She should have screamed, cursed, anything to drive away the memory. But when she closed her eyes, all she felt was the magnetic ache of wanting more. Far across the city, Damon stood on the balcony of his estate, staring out at the forest that framed his territory. His jaw was clenched, his hands balled into fists. His wolf paced inside him, restless, furious at the distance between them. He had marked her. There was no undoing it now. Aria was his mate, the one fate had chosen for him. His wolf rejoiced, but Damon's human side drowned in guilt. He hadn't given her a choice. He'd taken what should have been hers to decide. The council would never forgive him for choosing a human. And worse, she didn't even know what she was becoming. A knock on his office door pulled him from his thoughts. Marcus, one of the pack elders, entered with a bow of his head. His sharp eyes, flecked with silver, gleamed with disapproval. "You've been reckless," Marcus said bluntly. "The council is already whispering. They won't accept her." Damon's golden gaze snapped to him, hard as steel. "She is mine." Marcus didn't flinch. "She's human. Weak. Vulnerable. If you insist on claiming her, you risk everything: your throne, your pack, your legacy." Damon's growl rumbled low in his chest, wolf flashing behind his eyes. "Then let them try to take it from me." But even as he spoke, Damon knew Marcus was right. The pack needed stability. The council wanted a Luna from noble bloodlines. And now, with Aria marked but unprepared, the cracks in his empire were beginning to show. Aria's transformation began subtly, then violently. At first, it was little things: a sharper sense of smell, the ability to hear conversations on the street below her apartment. But then came the dreams. She ran through forests bathed in moonlight, her body low to the ground, muscles coiled with power she didn't recognize. The wind whipped past her face, and when she looked down, it wasn't her hands but paws that carried her. She woke shaking, drenched in sweat, the echo of howls still ringing in her ears. By the third day, she couldn't deny it anymore. Something inside her was changing. At work, she dropped a cup of coffee, and instead of shattering, her reflexes caught it mid-fall. Her co-workers gasped, but Aria only stared at her own hands, horrified. She needed answers. And the only person who could give them was the one man she was trying desperately to avoid. That evening, her past came knocking, literally. Jake stood outside her apartment door, flowers in hand, eyes wide with regret. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Aria, please. I made a mistake. Maya meant nothing. You're the one I want." The sight of him made bile rise in her throat. She thought of all the nights she had believed his lies, the future she had imagined with him. A future stolen in one cruel moment. "Go home, Jake," she said flatly, trying to close the door. But he shoved his hand against it. "Don't do this. We can still fix it. We can elope tonight, start fresh, just the two of us." Aria's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, she almost laughed at the irony. The safe choice, the familiar path, standing right in front of her. But the thought of Jake's touch made her recoil. Her body, her soul, already knew who it belonged to, and it wasn't him. Before she could answer, the air shifted. A low growl rolled down the hallway, primal and deadly. Damon stood there, golden eyes blazing, his presence filling the narrow space like a storm. He had tracked her scent here, unable to stay away. And now, seeing another man at her door, his wolf snapped. Jake stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. He didn't understand what Damon was, but every instinct screamed at him to run. "Who the hell are you?" Jake stammered. Damon's lips curled in a snarl. "The man who owns what you lost." Aria stepped between them, heart pounding. "Stop," she cried, placing her hands against Damon's chest. His body vibrated with barely restrained violence, muscles taut, ready to rip Jake apart. Her touch steadied him, barely. His wolf still raged, but her presence soothed the worst of the storm. Damon's gaze softened as it fell on her, the bond tugging tight. But when Aria turned to shield Jake, Damon's chest tightened with something far more dangerous than anger. Hurt. You'd protect him? Damon's voice was low, wounded. Aria's throat tightened. I don't want blood on my hands. Not his. Not anyone's. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Jake bolted, flowers abandoned on the floor, leaving the two of them alone in the doorway. Damon's eyes burned into hers, not with fury this time, but with something deeper. Something raw. You can't keep running from this, Aria. You're mine. And whether you admit it or not, I am yours. Her breath shuddered. Part of her wanted to deny it, to push him away and cling to the life she thought she knew. But her wolf, the wolf inside her that had begun to stir, growled in agreement. The bond was undeniable. And it terrified her. Aria sat curled on the edge of her couch, the abandoned flowers from Jake's visit still lying wilted on the floor. Her hands shook as she held a steaming cup of tea, though she barely remembered making it. Every nerve in her body buzzed with restless energy, her senses stretched too thin. She could hear the couple arguing in the apartment below her, smell the curry someone was cooking across the street, feel the faint vibration of footsteps in the hallway. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human. And she knew exactly who was responsible. The knock at her door came like thunder. Her pulse leapt, and even before she moved, she knew who stood there. The pull in her chest had already told her. Damon. She opened the door to find him towering in the doorway, rain dripping from his dark hair, golden eyes burning with intensity. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick with everything unsaid, anger, longing, fear, desire. Finally, Aria broke it. What did you do to me? Her voice cracked on the words, but her gaze held steady. Damon stepped inside without waiting for permission, closing the door behind him. His presence filled the room, making it feel smaller, suffocating. I should have told you sooner, he admitted, his voice rough, burdened with guilt. But you need the truth now. All of it. Aria set her cup down, crossing her arms to keep herself from trembling. Then start talking. He held her gaze, steady and unflinching. Werewolves are real. We live among humans, hidden, bound by ancient laws. I'm an alpha, leader of the Shadow Moon Pack. And you, his voice softened, almost reverent. You're my fated mate. The word struck like lightning. Aria let out a harsh laugh, shaking her head. Mate? You sound insane. You felt it, he pressed, stepping closer. The way your senses are changing. The way you can't ignore the pull between us. That mark on your neck, it's the mate bond. It's why your body feels different. Because you're not human anymore, Aria. You're becoming one of us. Her knees wobbled, and she sank onto the couch, staring at him in disbelief. Becoming a wolf? Damon crouched in front of her, his massive frame folding low so he could look into her eyes. On the next full moon, you'll shift for the first time. It will be painful, but it will also be the most freeing moment of your life. You'll understand what you are, what we are. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. You took that choice from me, she whispered. You marked me without asking, without warning. I didn't want this. I wanted one night to forget, not a lifetime chained to a monster out of a fairy tale. Damon flinched as if she had struck him. He reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hanging uselessly in the air. I never wanted to hurt you. My wolf, he couldn't resist. He recognized you instantly. I've waited centuries for you, Aria. Centuries. She shook her head violently, rising to her feet. I don't care about centuries. I care about my life. My choices. And you've taken them all away. The air crackled with tension, the bond pulling them together even as her words pushed them apart. Damon's eyes darkened, pain carved into his features. If you want time, take it. If you want space, I'll give it. But know this, nothing can break this bond. You are mine, and I am yours. That's not choice. That's fate. Aria's chest heaved, her heart torn between fury and the undeniable pull of the bond. She shoved past him, grabbing her coat. Then I want space. Stay away from me. Damon's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. His wolf howled in protest, but he forced himself to let her go. He would not cage her. Not when she already believed him a monster. The door slammed shut behind her, and Damon was left alone in the silence of her apartment, staring at the empty space where she had stood. For 2 nights, Aria stayed at her friend Sarah's place, hiding from the storm inside her. Sarah knew nothing of werewolves, but she offered comfort, a couch to sleep on, and wine that did little to dull the bond's constant pull. At night, Aria scoured the internet, searching feverishly. She found articles about folklore, cryptic forums where people claimed to be wolves, stories about mate bonds and shifting. Most were nonsense, but some rang too true to ignore. One post caught her eye: when the bite takes, you'll feel the bond. You'll feel him in your mind, your heart, your very bones. You can run from him, but the tether will only tighten. The moon doesn't make mistakes. She slammed her laptop shut, heart racing. Her hands trembled, and she pressed her palms against her face. She wanted to scream, to undo everything. But deep down, she couldn't deny it. The way she felt him even now, far away. The way her blood surged at the thought of his touch. The way part of her, no matter how much she hated it, already longed to be back in his arms. Damon, meanwhile, was unraveling. In the Shadow Moon Pack's council chamber, he faced a half-circle of elders, their gazes sharp and condemning. Elder Marcus spoke for them all. You've broken the laws, Damon. You've marked a human. The council cannot condone this. If she fails her first shift, if she dies, her blood will be on your hands. Damon's wolf snarled, barely restrained. She will not die. She is stronger than any of you realize. And if she is not? Marcus pressed. If she rejects this life? Rejects you? Damon's jaw clenched. The thought alone made his wolf howl in agony. But he would not bend. He had lost too much already. He would not lose her too. She is mine, he said coldly, golden eyes blazing. And I will fight anyone who dares to take her from me. Back in Sarah's apartment, Aria lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The bond tugged at her like an invisible chain, pulling her heart in 2 directions. She didn't know what terrified her more, the idea that Damon was lying, or the possibility that he wasn't. And the full moon was only 3 nights away. The night of the full moon arrived like a storm Aria wasn't ready to face. She had spent the past 3 days in a haze of restless energy, her body betraying her with bursts of strength and senses too sharp to ignore. The taste of rain on the wind, the thrum of footsteps across the street, the restless pull in her chest that only led back to him, to Damon. She hated it. She hated how she couldn't escape him, even in her dreams. Sarah had tried to help, offering comfort and distraction, but nothing dulled the rising fire under Aria's skin. By dusk, her body ached with a strange fever, her pulse erratic. She stood at the window, staring at the enormous silver moon rising over the city, and something inside her snapped. Her knees buckled. Heat spread through her veins, unbearable, relentless. She fell to the floor with a strangled cry, clutching her stomach as her bones began to shift, crack, stretch. Her scream turned to a guttural growl as fur rippled across her skin, her nails lengthening into claws. Sarah's terrified gasp barely reached her ears. Aria? Oh my God. But Aria couldn't answer. Her world was pain and fire and the terrifying exhilaration of becoming something else. Her wolf had awakened. When the shift was complete, she stood trembling on 4 legs, her coat a shimmering silver that gleamed under the moonlight. Her reflection in the window startled her, emerald eyes blazing from a wolf's face. And yet, despite the fear, despite the confusion, something inside her felt whole. For the first time in her life, she wasn't broken. But she wasn't alone. The door to Sarah's apartment burst open, and with it came the stench of blood and rogues. A massive wolf lunged, snarling, eyes filled with malice. Behind it, more shadows flooded the room, men with weapons, wolves with bared teeth. They had come for her. Aria stumbled backward, instinct warring with terror. Her wolf growled, low and fierce, demanding she fight. But she was new, untested, trembling on her paws. "Take her alive," a voice barked, cold, commanding. Marcus Steele, alpha of the rival pack. His eyes gleamed with hunger as he stepped into the light. "The moon wolf lives. With her blood, Damon will fall." The rogues surged forward. Aria's wolf roared to life. With a snarl, she snapped at the nearest attacker, her jaws clamping down with a strength that shocked even her. Blood sprayed, the metallic taste filling her mouth. Another came from behind, and she whipped around, claws slashing. Her instincts guided her, raw but powerful. She fought with desperation, her howl splitting the night. And Damon heard it. Miles away, his head snapped up as the bond blazed like fire in his chest. His wolf surged forward, howling with fury. "Mate! Danger! Mobilize!" Damon bellowed, already shifting. His pack leapt to action, warriors flooding the courtyard, their howls echoing into the night. Damon's own transformation ripped through him, bones snapping, fur erupting, until the alpha wolf stood in his full glory. Massive, dark, golden eyes blazing with fury. They ran. By the time Damon and his pack reached Sarah's building, chaos reigned. Rogues swarmed, Sarah screamed, and in the center of it all, Aria fought like a silver flame. She was raw, untrained, but breathtaking, her silver coat glowing under the moon, her movements wild but devastating. Damon's heart clenched with pride and terror. She was magnificent. She was his. He launched into the fray, tearing through rogues with lethal precision. His wolf fought with ruthless grace, every strike fueled by the mate bond's fury. The Shadow Moon warriors clashed with Steel's rogues, the street echoing with snarls, claws, and the sickening crack of bone. Aria stumbled, cornered by 2 wolves twice her size. Damon's roar shook the night as he barreled through them, placing himself at her side. For the first time, their wolves fought together. Instinctively, they moved in sync, she slashed, he tore, covering each other's blind spots like they had trained for this all their lives. Their bond flared, stronger than ever. She felt his rage, his determination, his love, flooding her veins like fire. He felt her fear, her courage, her desperate will to protect not just herself but him. Together, they turned the tide. At last, Damon lunged at Marcus Steele himself, their clash brutal and violent. Steele's wolf was massive, scarred, filled with hatred. But Damon was alpha, and tonight, he had something more. He had his mate at his side. As Steele pinned Damon to the ground, jaws snapping for his throat, Aria's wolf leapt. Her teeth sank deep into Steele's flank, ripping him away. Damon surged up, seizing the opening. With a bone-shattering crunch, he brought Steele down, forcing him to the ground. The rival alpha fell, broken and bleeding. His rogues scattered, their howls fading into the night. Silence followed, broken only by Aria's panting breaths and Damon's steady growl as he stood guard over her. Around them, his pack bowed their heads in respect, eyes fixed on the silver wolf who had fought like a Luna born. Aria's chest heaved, her wolf trembling but standing tall. For the first time, she didn't feel like prey. She felt powerful. Alive. Damon shifted back into human form, his chest bare and streaked with blood. He approached slowly, reverently, his golden eyes never leaving hers. "You are mine," he whispered, voice thick with awe. "My Luna. My mate." Aria shifted back, collapsing into trembling human form, Damon's jacket immediately wrapping around her shoulders. She stared at him, tears streaking her face, her body shaking from exhaustion and shock. And yet, when she looked into his eyes, she didn't feel fear. She felt something far more dangerous. Belonging. The battle was over, but the night lingered heavy with its echoes. The streets smelled of smoke and blood, broken glass glittered in the moonlight, and the cries of wounded wolves faded into silence. Yet in the center of it all, Damon held Aria close, his arms wrapped around her trembling frame as though he would never let her go again. Her cheek rested against his bare chest, her heartbeat wild, matching his. She was exhausted, shaking, and yet when her eyes lifted to meet his, there was no fear. Only the bond, raw, undeniable, binding them with a force stronger than blood or law. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Damon cupped her face gently, his golden eyes blazing. "No, little wolf. You saved me." The days that followed were a blur of healing and reckoning. For the Shadow Moon Pack, Aria's transformation was proof of prophecy fulfilled. The Silver Wolf was no myth. She was here, fierce and real, chosen by the Moon Goddess herself. At first, whispers filled the halls, a human turned Luna, untested, unworthy. But those whispers died quickly, silenced by the memory of Aria fighting at Damon's side, her silver coat shining as she helped bring down Marcus Steele. The pack saw her not as weakness, but as strength reborn. For Aria, the change was harder to accept. Her reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, sharper, stronger, her green eyes brighter, her movements surer. The wolf inside her stirred constantly now, no longer silent, guiding her steps with instinct she hadn't known she carried. She felt powerful. She felt alive. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel broken. But the greatest change was Damon. No longer did he hide behind iron walls or cold distance. His touch was steady, his gaze softer, though no less commanding. He stayed near her always, not out of control or jealousy, but because he couldn't bear the bond tugging them apart. His wolf purred when she laughed, growled when she frowned, and howled with joy when she let herself lean into him. And slowly, piece by piece, Aria allowed herself to fall. The mating ceremony came under the next full moon. The Shadow Moon Pack gathered in the sacred clearing, a circle of ancient stones bathed in silver light. Wolves in every form filled the space, howls rising into the night sky. Torches flickered, illuminating Damon and Aria as they stood before the altar of stone, their hands entwined. Aria wore white, not the wedding dress that had once hung in her closet, mocking her broken dreams, but a gown woven with lunar silk, flowing and radiant. Around her neck rested a pendant shaped like a crescent moon, gifted by the elders in recognition of her lineage as the Moon Wolf reborn. Damon stood tall beside her, dark and commanding, his black shirt open at the collar, his golden eyes glowing with pride. For the first time in centuries, he looked complete. The eldest council member raised his hands. "Tonight, under the witness of the moon, we unite Alpha Damon Blackthorn and Luna Aria. Not in contract, not in convenience, but in fate, in bond, in blood." Aria's heart pounded as Damon lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it softly. His voice carried across the clearing, deep and steady. "From this night forward, I am yours. My strength is your shield, my heart is your home. Wherever the moon leads us, I will follow, as alpha, as mate, as yours." Her throat tightened as she repeated the vow, her voice clear, her wolf's growl echoing faintly beneath her words. "From this night forward, I am yours. My courage is your strength, my heart is your freedom. Wherever the moon leads us, I will follow, as Luna, as mate, as yours. The bond between them flared white-hot, glowing visibly for all to see. Wolves howled in unison, a chorus of acceptance that shook the earth beneath their feet. Damon pulled her into his arms, his lips claiming hers as the moon bathed them both in light. No doubts remained. She was his Luna. He was her Alpha. They were one. Months later, peace had settled over the Shadow Moon Pack. The wounds of battle had healed, and under Damon and Aria's leadership, the pack thrived. Aria's interior design business had blossomed into something new, a haven where wolves and humans alike could meet, trade, and build bridges between their worlds. She no longer felt torn between identities. She was both, the woman who once sat in a nightclub, broken and lost, and the Luna who now stood beside one of the most powerful alphas in history. Her aunt and sister were ghosts of a past she no longer carried. Jake's memory was nothing more than ash on the wind. The only future she saw was the one shining before her, full of wolves, love, and the promise of something greater than she'd ever dreamed. On a quiet evening, she stood on the balcony of the pack house, the forest stretching wide and endless below. Damon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his lips brushing her temple. "You're glowing," he murmured. Aria laughed softly. "That's just the moonlight." But his hand slid to her stomach, resting protectively there. "No, little wolf. That's ours." Her breath caught. The secret they hadn't shared yet, not even with the pack, was now spoken aloud. Their child. The next generation, a pup born of silver wolf and alpha bloodline. Tears filled her eyes as she leaned back against him. "Do you ever think about that night? How it all started?" His lips curved into a smile against her skin. "Every day. The night you thought you were forgetting everything, was the night I finally found everything I'd been waiting for." Her heart swelled, the bond humming with joy. She turned in his arms, pressing her lips to his, sealing the promise once more. And as the moon rose high above, silver light pouring over the forest, Aria knew the truth. Sometimes the worst night of your life could become the beginning of everything. The forest was quiet now. The echoes of battle had faded, the blood washed away by moonlight, and in its place was something new, something eternal. Aria, once a woman who walked into a nightclub with nothing but heartbreak and whiskey burning in her chest, now stood as Luna of the Shadow Moon Pack. Not because she chased destiny, but because destiny had always been chasing her. Think about it for a moment. One night. Just one reckless, desperate night to forget her pain, to feel wanted, to remember she was alive, and that was the night fate decided to place her exactly where she was always meant to be. We all have nights like that, don't we? Nights where we wish we could erase everything. But sometimes those nights aren't about forgetting. Sometimes they're the moments that set the rest of our lives on fire. Aria's story is a reminder that broken hearts are not the end. They're the beginning. She thought she was worthless. She thought she was unwanted, cursed to live in the shadow of her sister's cruelty and her fiancé's betrayal. But the moon had other plans. In Damon, she found not just a lover, not just a protector, but a reflection of her own strength. And in Aria, Damon found the one thing centuries of power and wealth could never give him: completion. Together, they rewrote what it means to be Alpha and Luna. Not dominance and submission, not fear and control, but partnership. He stood as her shield, and she became his fire. He taught her that love doesn't erase scars, it honors them. And she taught him that even the strongest leaders need someone who sees the man beneath the alpha. Now, I want you to imagine yourself in Aria's place. If the moon placed that kind of choice in your hands, would you take it? Would you let fate pull you into a world of danger, wolves, and ancient bonds? Would you surrender your past, all your pain, all your doubts, for a love that doesn't ask permission, a love that claims you body and soul? Or would you run from it, terrified of what you might lose? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know, because sometimes hearing your stories, your choices, your voices, helps shape the stories we tell here. And if this tale of Aria and Damon stirred something in you, if it made your heart race, if it made your chest ache, if it made you believe, even for a moment, in a love stronger than betrayal, stronger than fear, then do me one favor. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the Alpha's Romance Library if you haven't already, and ring that little bell so you never miss another story of fierce alphas, brave lunas, and the bonds that defy everything. Because next week, we're going deeper. The story of The Rogue Wolf's Virgin Bride awaits, a tale of an Omega forced into marriage with the most feared wolf in the territories. But what no one knows is that she holds a secret powerful enough to destroy his entire world, or save it. That's the story I'll be telling you next, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, my friends, remember this: sometimes the nights that break us are the very nights that build us. Sometimes the moon leads us where we least expect, and sometimes love doesn't knock politely at the door. It crashes in like a storm and refuses to let go. This is the Alpha's Romance Library, reminding you that you deserve a love that claims you, protects you, and sees every scar as proof of your survival. Thank you for watching, thank you for being part of our pack, and may the moon always guide your heart.